Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
قتل 11 مصليا عراقيا وأصيب العشرات.
11 Iraqi worshippers were killed and tens of others were injured by a car bomb that targeted the Shiite mosque in the area of Qatari in northern Iran. 18 Iraqis were killed and dozens were wounded in separate incidents in different areas throughout Iraq.
Another bloody day is not new to the Iraqis, who witnessed a number of incidents that killed many innocent victims and wounded dozens of others. One man exploded himself using a car bomb near a Shiite mosque in the area of Qatari, northern Baghdad, targeting worshippers as they were leaving the mosque. The explosion killed a large number of people, including 2 children, and injured dozens of others. A police source in the area said that the worshippers found another person inside the mosque who was wearing an explosive belt. They were able to arrest him.
I have nothing to do with this. They imprisoned me for 4 days. They put me inside of a box.
In the area of New Baghdad, west of the Iraqi capital, armed men attacked a group of workers who were waiting to work. 3 of them were killed and 18 others were injured.
We were just going to work for a mere 10 or 12,000 dinars. These criminals and terrorists, what are they doing here? This is a terrorism situation. It is destroying us. Innocent and weak people are coming from the districts to work for just 10,000 or 15,000 dinars. Still there is killing. 3 of my nephews were maimed, one on his hand, one on his leg, and the other on his face.
3 people were killed in an attack by armed men who set on fire a food supply truck on Baghdad Amiriya Road. In the city of Sadr, northeast of the capital, the residents of the city held a funeral of Sheikh Fadi al-Lami, who was the Imam of the Imam Ali Mosque, after armed men assassinated him in an attack that killed 2 of his friends. In Hasawati, south of Baghdad, 3 policemen were killed and 4 others were injured by a car bomb. 4 soldiers were killed by an explosive device that exploded near the car of the center of the city of Khalidiyah. Near Iskandariya, a suburb of the city of Hilla, south of Baghdad, armed men killed the supervisor and 4 of his bodyguards. A policeman was killed and 3 others were injured by an explosive device in the area of Bohriz in Ba'quba, northeast of Baghdad.
Representing His Majesty Sultan Qaboos, His Highness Sayyid Haytham bin Tariq Al Saeed, Minister of Heritage and Culture, participates in the United Nations Summit. World leaders nearing the end of a 3-day summit urge the United Nations to play a bigger role on the world stage in everything from the fight against terrorism to easing the crunch caused by high oil prices. After the last speeches today, the 191 United Nations member states will adopt a document that takes a step towards revamping the United Nations to meet the challenges of the 21st century and adds a new impetus to helping lift poor countries out of poverty. But bitter disagreements meant that many of its most substantive measures had to be left out. While those disagreements were playing out in the General Assembly chamber, attention was largely focused elsewhere. Iran's president said his country was willing to provide nuclear technology to other Muslim states, and a United Nations treaty to fight global corruption got its 30th ratification, triggering its entry into force in 90 days. Leaders stressed repeatedly that more needs to be done towards progress on the Millennium Development Goals, though major differences remained on what to do and who should pay. Calls for Security Council reform were a constant refrain. The demands came from both countries that want permanent seats on the council, including Brazil and Japan, as well as those that have no aspirations for full-time representations. Israeli Foreign Minister Silvan Shalom held talks at the United Nations with his Qatari counterpart Sheikh Hamad bin Jassim bin Jabr Al Thani in what were described as the first open and official meeting between the two countries. The two men discussed Israel's recently completed withdrawal from the Gaza Strip. Speaking to reporters before the meeting, Al Thani said Israeli withdrawal would be contingent on progress on peace, hoping the West Bank will be the next step.
President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who is expected to present Iran's fresh proposal on resumption of nuclear talks between Iran and Europe, stole the show on Friday when his meeting with UN Secretary General Kofi Annan topped the world news. After the meeting, a communique was released by the UN Secretary General's office, which said Iran's nuclear program, as well as the situation in Iraq, were the central part of the meet. Foreign ministers of Germany, Britain, and France, accompanied by the EU Foreign Policy Chief Javier Solana, were also present in the meeting. The communique stresses that friendly talks were held regarding Iran's nuclear program, indicating the fact that both parties are in search of coming up with an acceptable solution to the case. Concerning the content of the talks, British Foreign Secretary Jack Straw had this to tell us.
Two sets of talks today. They've been talks. One with Dr. Laranjani and the second with Kofi Annan and the President of the Islamic Republic, Dr. Ahmadinejad. As I say, we're going to listen carefully to what His Excellency the President has to say in his address to the General Assembly on Saturday afternoon and make an assessment from there.
Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says all Iraqi neighboring states should join hands for restoring security and stability to the war-torn country. President Ahmadinejad said that in a meeting with Iraqi President Jalal Talabani on the sidelines of the UN summit, where the Iraqi president hailed the contributions Iran made in line with restoration of tranquility to Iraq. The Iranian president had a busy schedule on Friday as he held separate meetings with his counterparts from Algeria, Ukraine, Belarus, Pakistan, Indonesia, Tajikistan, Georgia, Nigeria, Croatia, as well as head of Bosnian Presidential Council, Armenian Prime Minister, and Kuwaiti Crown Prince. The sides discussed regional and international issues as well as enhancement of mutual ties.
Good evening. His Majesty the King has called for continuing to build a new vision for a new age whereby the basics of life and peace are provided for all peoples. Addressing the UN summit in New York, King Abdullah said humanity had witnessed the dangers of a global order that excludes people, particularly the youth, from opportunities and hope. Jordan, he said, had achieved tangible progress towards achieving development goals set by the Millennium Summit.
He has seen the dangers of a global system that excludes people, especially youth, from opportunity and hope. Now the people of the world are looking to us to bring our nations together, to act with urgency, and to achieve results. I am honored to report that Jordan is on track to achieve the majority of its Millennium Development Targets.
For the first time since the Gaza pullout, IDF troops in the south were placed on high alert this morning after tracks were found indicating that Palestinians had broken through the border fence and infiltrated into Israel. Residents of Moshav Netiv HaAsra and 2 kibbutzim close to the border were instructed not to leave their homes, and school was canceled today. Large forces searched for the infiltrators, and after several hours, they captured the men who were unarmed. The alert was called off, and the residents were allowed to leave their homes, but have been advised to remain vigilant. Palestinian officials said today that police have largely managed to seal the border between Gaza and Egypt. This after several days in which hundreds of people streamed across that border. Also today, Palestinian and Israeli security officials announced that they have seized a total of 600 kilos of drugs along the border in separate raids. A senior Israeli official said earlier today that the credibility of the Palestinian Authority is on the line over its failure to so far control the unrestricted movement across its border with Egypt. Reserve General Amos Gilad, the head of the Defense Ministry's Diplomatic and Security Division, said that he believes Egypt will tighten control on its side of the border, but he charged that the Palestinian leadership appears to be running a chaotic system which has neither law nor order. Yesterday, some 50 Palestinian gunmen, including Hamas terrorists, used a dump truck to ram a new hole in the concrete wall between Gaza and Egypt. Palestinian gunmen stood by as hundreds of civilians streamed across the border. Mixed reaction today to Prime Minister Ariel Sharon's address to the United Nations World Summit in New York. Speaking in Hebrew, Sharon last night acknowledged the right of the Palestinian people to liberty and to an independent state, saying, quote, "As someone whose destiny led me to be a fighter and a commander in all of Israel's wars, I reach out today to our Palestinian neighbors in a call for reconciliation and compromise to end the bloody conflict." Sharon also said, "I come here from Jerusalem, the eternal, undivided capital of the State of Israel." He insisted on Israel's right to continue building the West Bank security fence, and without naming Iran, he then slammed the UN for not speaking out against the country whose leadership regularly issues calls to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Right-wing opponents of Sharon's policies within his own party called his speech a farewell to the Likud. Knesset member Benjamin Netanyahu, Sharon's main rival for party leadership, said today that the Prime Minister's speech made it clear that he's with the left. Netanyahu said, quote, "The rift between Sharon and the Likud is as wide as Tel Aviv." Housing Minister Yitzhak Herzog of Labor said that Sharon's speech evoked memories of slain Premier Yitzhak Rabin. However, Deputy Prime Minister Ehud Olmert insisted that the speech was not a farewell to the Likud, but a challenge to forge a middle path rather than pacifying the extreme right. Palestinian reaction to Prime Minister Sharon's speech was less than enthusiastic. Planning Minister Ghassan al-Khatib said that he was disappointed by Sharon's comments on Jerusalem and the security fence. PA official Nabil Abu Redina said that in his view, the speech shows that Sharon is interested in causing the failure of the roadmap peace proposal rather than advancing the peace process.
On this day in the year 1982, Israeli forces and their allied Lebanese militia committed a massacre against Palestinian refugees in Beirut, killing 3,297 Palestinians, mostly women, children, and elderly. During the Israeli invasion of Beirut, the Lebanese militia were given a green light by the Israeli army to storm both Sabra and Shatila refugee camps, seal them, and start a systematic slaughter of the residents. Several survivors managed to break the deadly siege and spread the word on what was happening inside the camp. However, the massacre continued for 3 entire days under the close supervision of the Israeli forces. World opinions and media outlets trembled to the footage that were first transmitted from the massacre grounds, with mangled bodies cramming the narrow alleys of both camps. While survivors wandered aimlessly among the bodies, the physical and physiological scars of the massacre continued to disturb the sleep of survivors until this very day, as they could not forget the view of the bodies of their loved ones mixed with the rubble of demolished buildings.
The Pakistani opposition organized a demonstration in the city of Islamabad, condemning the normalization with the Israeli occupation and demanding an end to it. The Pakistani president, Pervez Musharraf, has taken steps to normalize his country's relations with the Zionist entity, latest of which was his handshake with the Israeli Prime Minister at the UN summit in New York.
The opposition organized a demonstration in the Pakistani capital of Islamabad protesting the handshake between Pervez Musharraf and Ariel Sharon, the butcher of the Sabra and Shatila massacres. Demonstrators consider this to be a step in the framework of normalizing Pakistani relations with the Zionist enemy. The Pakistani people and opposition parties reject this normalization, which they view as compromising the unequivocal Pakistani principles toward the Palestinian plight. Demonstrators yelled phrases against Musharraf's domestic and foreign policies. They accused Musharraf of underhandedly promoting an American agenda in the area and called for his resignation from the Prime Ministry office and the Army command.
We condemn and we think that it is shameful for Pakistani nation.
We condemn the handshake between Musharraf and Sharon because it is a step toward the framework of normalizing relations with the Zionist entity. We demand this normalization be stopped. Musharraf has decided to do this unilaterally with the objective of appeasing the U.S. Musharraf took a lot of measures that are contradictory to Pakistani's principles, both domestically and internationally. We will work on removing him from office.
The protesters held signs reminding people of the Zionist mischief and attempts to penetrate the Muslim nation by establishing relations with a nuclear Islamic country. They view this as an attempt to isolate Pakistan from the Muslim countries, especially when considering that Palestinians have rejected this step, describing it as a gift to Sharon. Protesters called on Pakistanis to reject normalization with the Zionist enemy after Israel announced its intention to establish economic relations with Pakistan and called on Zionist businessmen to invest there.
The Pakistani people cannot accept the Zionist entity. They condemn Musharraf's handshake with Sharon. We will work on stopping the normalization with the Zionist entity, which aims to economically, culturally, and politically invade Pakistan.
The Pakistani people were shocked by Musharraf's handshake with Sharon and demand an end to normalization with the Zionist enemy. Sadiq Bilal, Al-Alam Television, Islamabad.
Despite booming oil and share prices, the Arab world is unlikely to meet UN goals for cutting poverty, hunger, and unemployment by 2015, partly because wealth is distributed unequally. UN Under-Secretary General Mervat Tellawi told Reuters in an interview in Beirut that there is a huge human development problem in the Arab world. She said there are problems in the distribution of wealth, investment, and the economic activities of Arab countries. The Millennium Development Goals set by the United Nations include halving extreme poverty rates worldwide by 2015, curbing the spread of AIDS and providing elementary education. UN data show that 16.8% of the Arab world was in poverty in 2000. But Tellawi said economic and banking policies in the Arab world lacked a strategic vision. She said most of the Arab banks lending is direct to unproductive activities, mainly construction, and not to productive sectors like industry and agriculture. Tellawi said she was optimistic Arab nations would meet their target for providing elementary education, but their educations did not meet labor market needs. Investcom Holding, the telecom group owned by Lebanon's Miati family, said yesterday its consortium had won one of two mobile phone licenses in Afghanistan. Investcom, which was expected to make its marked debut on the Middle Eastern browse in the near future, said it had paid $40.1 million for a 15-year national license that can be extended by 10 years. the same price as the second grouping made up of Saudi Arabia and US partners. Investcom owns 60% of the Afghan bidding consortium. Al-Qatari Group, a company based in the United Arab Emirates, owns the remaining 40%. Investcom said the second winning consortium, Watan Mobile Afghanistan, included Al-Hubbi Telecom from Saudi Arabia and Cellular One and Globecom of the United States.
The ministers of tourism from Egypt, Jordan, Palestine, and Israel have agreed to hold quarterly and annual meetings in each of the 4 countries, beginning in Palestine after 3 months. The meetings will examine the possibilities of promoting and stimulating the tourism industry in these countries through joint tourism programs. This came during a meeting that took place in the resort town of Gardaa, which was attended by the ministers of tourism from the 4 countries, as well as the governor of the Red Sea district, Saad Abu Ridawa, and officials from the Chamber of Commerce. During discussions that took place on Wednesday in a meeting in the city of Gardaa, the ministers of tourism from Egypt, Palestine, Jordan, and Israel agreed to hold periodic meetings every 3 months to talk about the possibilities of working together to promote and encourage tourism. They agreed to hold the next meeting in Palestine. The Egyptian Minister of Tourism, Ahmed al-Mughrabi, said that the meeting was held with the aim of bringing the Israeli and Palestinian viewpoints closer together.
In reality, we talked about a number of topics that are important to all 4 sides, including religious tourism, as a way to provide a full understanding of the region, where the 3 monotheistic religions originated. So there naturally would be a joint interest in some sort of religious tourism. It has become known that tourists from distant areas such as South and North America, China, India, and East Asia will travel to more than 1 country during their visit. Of course, if we continue working together, it will be in the interest of increasing activity in the 4 countries.
وطبعا ده لو تم تنشيطه فهو في مصلحة زيادة الحركة للأربع دول المعنية.
Mughrabi requested that the World Organization of Tourism remove the warning it issued against traveling to these countries because of the new developments in the region. Abraham Hedson, the Minister of Tourism for Israel, considered this meeting as the beginning of a new phase for the region, especially after the pullout from Gaza. The Palestinian Minister of Tourism and Palestinian Artifacts, Ziad al-Banda, called on the entire world to visit tourist areas in the Palestinian territories. He indicated that future meetings will address the obstacles facing tourism via a joint committee between the private sector and the ministers, so that tourism becomes one of the contributors towards a peaceful settlement.
In the meeting that took place today in Gardaa, the ministers discussed the need to call on governments and officials in the region to work towards opening up to allow visitors to come to the Gaza Strip or any Palestinian city, whether it be by sea, air, or land.
Dr. Aliya Buran, the Jordan tourism minister, said that the meeting confirmed the need to fix all the problems that challenge economic activities.
I think that one of the important topics we discussed today is issues relating to travel preparations, whether bilaterally or at the regional level. I want to confirm that the Kingdom of Jordan has made it a policy for many years and decades to maintain security and stability in order to support both tourism and development.
The governor of the Red Sea district, Saad Abu Ridawa, attended the conference as well as the tourism officials of the Chambers of Commerce. Under the framework of confirming a greater Egyptian role in supporting a balanced, peaceful settlement, the city of Gardaa hosted a conference between the tourism ministers of Egypt, Palestine, Jordan, and Israel. There is hope that these conferences will realize the dreams of the Palestinian people. From the city of Gardaa, Ayman Al-Sayed, Nile News. the Jordanian television dramas, the Jordanian cinema is going into a new direction. Commentators hope that the film, The #1 Most Wanted, will affect the cinema industry in this country. The film deals with the increasing phenomena of global terrorism. The Jordanian security services participated in the making of the film, which will premiere at the end of the year. This is not a military training, neither is this a true helicopter landing, and it's not a military parade of security forces on the 4th year anniversary of September 11th. It is the film of a movie titled The #1 Most Wanted. The last scenes of the movie were perhaps filmed by coincidence around the 4th anniversary of the attacks of New York and Washington.
عم نعالج هذا الحدث دراميا لأنه هذا الحدث بيتطرق منه إلى
We are addressing terrorism through drama with the aim of highlighting the noble objective of living in a place without terrorism.
يخلو من هذا الوضع.
The message of terrorism is something that the security minister and the Jordanian government is paying attention to, because Jordan may have been the first country to be hit after America. It preempts terror and always condemns any attempts of terrorism anywhere.
The film tries to deal with two confused concepts, terrorism and resistance, in the Arab and Islamic societies, trying to distinguish between the two.
أكيد أصلاً يعني حقيقة كتابة الفيلم جاءت بالأصل.
Surely, the writing of the film aims to debate all issues of terrorism from all sides. The writer, Mr. Osama Khadr, managed to penetrate the mindset of terrorists. This is the first Jordanian film to cover what is known as terrorism. The security services carried out demolitions and military exercises, playing the security forces in a film which is the first of its kind in this country. For the first time, the security agency and special forces in Jordan participated in a cinematic film, a participation that would have never been possible without an atmosphere of terrorism since September 11th events. The story of the film, which lasts 2 hours, discusses the mentality of what is known as terrorism and the struggle between good and evil that dominates humanity.
Lady, you are a reporter. All the journalists have written about me demanding my arrest. As a journalist, do you understand how a young man turned into a terrorist feels afraid of knocking on his own door and entering his own home? We always differentiate between terrorist acts with the aim to kill and acts of legitimate resistance. In our film, a young innocent man studying medicine realizes that he left a book. He goes back to the university, and coincidentally, the university explodes. Now he's in trouble that he can't get out of. The film explores the kind of accusations that are leveled against him.
The #1 Most Wanted Arab by the security apparatus is the director and the lead actor in this film, with the participation of Syrian actors. The entire crew are hoping to complete the film before it is too late. Al-Madar, Nasser Shahid, Abu Dhabi TV, Petra.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.